so silent. Wow, everyone's ready.
Everybody's jumping.
I want to welcome all of you, and before I launch into a little bit of an intro for our artist friend, let me read our land acknowledgement statement. We at Blue Sky humbly acknowledge that our programming is being held on the traditional lands of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia, the Willamette, and the Willamette rivers. So thank you all for being here with us this evening. As it was reminded to me, we sort of get away from reminding people to turn off or silence their cell phones. So if you could do that, you're welcome. I'm sure to take pictures of our artist as he is delivering his talk, but if you could please do that now. And so it gives me extreme pleasure. I'm going to try not to get too emotional. Wow. I feel like I'm the proud mama here, as I've told him. But in any case, I am very proud to introduce our guest artist this evening, Yuyang Zhang. And yes, let's I think this is an artist, as we know, who does not need any introduction. So what I'd like to do is actually just for a brief moment share with you why this exhibition is so important to Blue Sky and to Yuyang, and a little bit about his trajectory here at Blue Sky, because I think it is sort of the culmination of years of work and effort and some really challenging moments that Yuyang has been through. So I first met Yuyang my first day at Blue Sky, almost 3 years ago, and I walked in, and I believe he was part of the exhibition committee that was putting up the Founders Show at that time, so that was around October 1. And he was a few months into his internship after graduating from PNCA with an MFA in visual studies, right? Woo! Yes. And so that was a whole year-long internship and an opportunity for him to continue to stay and work for an arts organization in the States. And I knew pretty quickly that Yuyang would be an amazing contributor to Blue Sky. And by that I mean his diligence, his work ethic, how he was as a team player. Unfortunately, as we know, something happened in 2019, 2020, so his internship got a little messed up, but he was there to help us transition to digital programming and was always willing to take on new projects and make things happen. He continued on as a volunteer, probably our number one star volunteer, even after his internship was done. And then I don't know how it came about, but he was encouraged to submit his work to the exhibition committee. And I think it was at that moment, I'd always known him as a good worker here and someone who really wanted to make a career as an artist, but that's when I really recognized him as a kind of a creative, the way his creative mind worked and the way that he saw the world as his work was discussed before the exhibition committee. So that deliberation then eventually would culminate in the exhibition that you see here on the walls as the work was approved. So, yay, yay. So subsequently, Yuyang came to me and said, I want to apply for this O1B visa. Can Blue Sky possibly help out? And I said, well, yes, absolutely, in any way we can. And so it began for him, really, not for us in any way, but really for Yuyang, a long and arduous process. Very stressful. And I saw the impact that it had on him trying to get this visa. And I think the outcome was the fortunate mutual beneficial relationship that exists today. So we gained Yuyang as a staff member here because of that. And at the same time, he's able to stay in the States to make his work as an artist, to share his artistic mind and world with audiences locally, nationally. And I think you will learn more as he tells us and takes us on a journey through his artistic mind, the way in which he does see the world, but also the impact the past few years have had on him. So it gives me great pleasure to hand over the mic to Yuyang. Hopefully it didn't take too much time, but it's all yours now. So,
well, thank you so much, Molly, for this incredible introductions. And so before I start my presentation or this talk, I want to thank a bunch of people. First, I want to thank C, who I had so much pleasure to work with to co-curate this show, to make this show happen. And I want to thank Corey, who spent so much time helping me with a project that I have never done before, that I have no idea if it's going to work out, but I'm glad we made it work. And also want to thank the install team at the Blue Sky, who spend their effort and spend their time to make this very complicated show up. And it is my tremendous gratitude. And also there are so many people, who helped me to make this show happen as it is. Everyone who has helped me. I cannot name all of you, but I'm sure you can recognize yourself. So so thank you. And also importantly, thanks to my mom, who has always been supporting me. No, she's not here, but I'll send my message to her. Well, okay, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I want to get things out of the way first to tell you what this show is about. So, this show is an amalgamation of materials, mediums, scale, idea, colors, and form. It's truly an amalgamation of all of these elements, fusing them together into two categories of the work, rather than as 10 small frame mixed media collages, and the others are 6 large-scale photographic diptych or photographic collages printed on vinyl. And we have one special installation piece behind you guys. It's a mixed media installation piece. So this exhibition, this work, speaks about the experience and the idea of Chinese diasporas in this context, the very specific Chinese diasporas, a member of the Chinese diaspora community who has been living in the US for over a decade, who tried to fit himself into this new foreign environment, trying to find his new identity. At the same time, he also tried to preserve his cultural authenticity. So that's the specific context, but also it speaks to, in a broader sense, it also speaks to these general ideas of the diasporas. Any member from any diasporas who has been dislocated from their hometown for various reasons, in the way that trying to experience and build a new life in a foreign country while preserving their authenticity. And then at the same time, this work also talks about the ideas of using historic elements and the contemporary elements, fusing them together to create a new narrative, an alternative narrative that makes a sharp commentaries towards social issues, sometimes political issues. And this work, and also this body of works also speaks to my personal journey, as many of you has known about, and Molly has mentioned about my personal journey of being a legit alien here, just to work, to devoted myself into capitalism. It also speaks about the journey for the past 20 months where I'm trying to get my visa, and all the things I have to go through, and it's kind of like the journey of my mindscape. And also, it also talks about the coping mechanism this show is also my coping mechanism. This is how I try to escape the reality, how I try to escape my journey of dealing with the lawyer, dealing with the government. I did that by creating all the art in my studio. So, and then why and who it is work for? So I said people who feel dislocated, people who feel kind of lost because they don't know what their identity is right now after they have been into a new country, and the people who are feeling really worried about the current state of the world. I mean we can go into war tomorrow with an independent country, so that's basically how the world is right now. And then and then to talk about the people who deals with their personal issues, social issues, by reducing those kind of anxieties into silly jokes, into memes, like reducing them into very trivial things. So, and if you are WandaVision fans, you can also count that into add that to the list. Okay, so now the first question. So why collages? Why collaging? So in this, so I have put some of the collaging works that I created in an early stage of playing with this kind of medium. So to give you a little bit of background, so I started out as a photographer, and after I went to grad school at the PNCA, the 2 years of studio practices pushed me towards to go into something more than just photographic prints, pushed me to thinking about critical issues, thinking about the history, thinking about identity, thinking about the ways I can use my media to talk about the issues I want to talk about. And then collaging was one of the things I was playing with while I was in grad school. And then 2020 happened. We all been locked down in our place. We were not able to go out, like photographers. We were not able to go out to take photos. So I started just starting to look at my old photos, like what I can do with my old photos. Can I do something fun? How can I cut them? How can I make them make a bunch of unrelated image into something new? Could there be a possibility for me to tell a different story through collages? So I just started doing that. So these are some of the work that I did before I moved into this body of work. And then also I'm thinking about the history of collages. Collages have been primarily used in the realm of data editing and curating. It's a very effective tool to make social and political commentaries. It is a perfect tool to dismantle the media. In this case, dismantle street photography. It is a really good tool to dismantle the hierarchies between the fine arts and the folk arts. It is also a very good tool to dismantle what's virtual and what's in the reality. And also, after dismantling this, naturally, this is also really good to recontextualize the materials, the image, into something totally new. And that something new is completely at the artist's disposal. And then finally, collages is a perfect tool for subversion. It's subversion to subvert the original ideas from the original contact from the original work and repurpose them into something totally new. So another thing that I've been thinking about looking at during my grad school was the propaganda. Well, you might. I'm not a first Chinese student, art student who dealt with this thing. So I was just like, there's something about propaganda that's so intriguing and fascinating, other than the political connotation. And I was trying to figure out what that is. And then I realized all of the Chinese propagandas, to me, they feel like commercials. They feel like a commercial backed up by the government agency, backed by the authority. It's almost like a commercials on steroid. In all this, if you consider them as commercials, you can see most of the people on the propaganda, they always seems very happy. They always seems very confident. They always seems like they are living a very picturesque, very idealized life. But in reality, it's just not the case. It's actually, if you consider what does a commercial means, the sole purpose of the commercial is to trick yourself into buying into certain lifestyle, into buying into certain things. And in this case, I'm thinking this is like a commercial backed by the government, tricking us to buy into this very idealized life. That's just not true. And then that's my observation. Why is everyone so happy? Why is everyone so happy? And then reality that's not true. So I was like, how can I work with that? Like, how can I work with that? I think about humor because I feel like people are smiling in the propaganda poster. I might as well just make something very humorous. So, and how can I do it? And during the past 20 months, one of the things I've been constantly doing is that I woke up pretty early. So I spend my morning hours, which is like 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, just to go through my archive, do my artist research, and make my art. Because I'm pretty sure no lawyer is going to send me an email at 4 in the morning. I mean, USCIS is not going to send me the mail and telling me, okay, there's a mail coming out at 4 in the morning, so that's like my safe hours, that's my safe space. And I'm doing that in my bed, just going through my phone, going through my archive. I'm looking through, what am I looking through on my phone? I'm looking at almost 30,000 photos on my phone. I'm looking at almost like 400 memes on my phone. I'm getting inspirations from music that I listened to in 2020. Taylor Swift, thank you. And also TV shows and movies and some artists. And then I want to create a work that has all the elements from my artistic research in that underneath the duets, smelling maniacally. So this is what I came up with the show. So if you're familiar with astrology, so this might be a good analogy to describe the show. So I consider my small collages as like my sun sign. Moon sign would be all this very large scale, very serene, very quiet photographic collages, because that's something I personally relate to. It's very sad and I love it. And then the rising would just be just like a disco ball. It's not here because otherwise you won't be able to see the presentation. So it's in the back room if you want to see that. So yeah, so that's the big three of the show, and let's continue. Okay, now I want to talk about the idea of the smaller, relatively small, framed mixed media collages. So when I think about when I was making this work, I'm thinking of like a very theatrical approach. I'm thinking about like audition. It's kind of like every work. I'm thinking about every frame, every work. It's kind of like a one drama play that's contained in that one frame. And what do we need to have for a play or for an act? We need actors. We need a stage. We need a script. So the actors can act on the stage based on the script and form that story or drama. So in this case, the propaganda all the figures, people from the propaganda posters, to me, they are the actors, and the photos are all from my personal photo archives. The photos becomes the stage for the people to act, to do their stories. And then the script. The scripts are usually formed by screenshots. This screenshot can contain found images, can be notifications, can be buttons, can be Instagram location tag, and like in this case, it's cake disappointment. And then through intensive layering, trimming, cutting, and this like a back and forth for hours. And then I will come up with the work that every element will fit into this frame seamlessly. Every element interact with each other very seamlessly, but also in a very delicate way. So that's the general idea of the small frame collages. And then for the large scale photographic diptych or collages, I'm thinking about what I'm feeling to myself. So I made this this body of work during the same time I was making those smaller collages. And then to me, although I had a lot of fun making mixed media collages, they're very chaotic, they're just like a train wreck. They talk about very specific, they're very colorful, they're very humor, they're funny, but deep down, they all talk about a very serious issue. It's like if you peer through the layers of an onion, you can see that the core of the work is very, very serious and tragic in a way. So, and to me, that's very intense. That's very intense to me as an artist, because I was also at the same time I was dealing with very intense stuff. I need something to calm my chi. I need something so I can, after an intense day of making this work, I can make something, just very pretty, very exquisite, kind of sad, but also it still allows me to practice my visual skills. And I do that, and I make this work by looking at the three primary things. So first would be hues. I'm thinking about, so these works are all made with two unrelated pictures. So one of them will always be a picture of a close-up shot of a car, and the other one will be the picture that from the archive where I took while I was strolling around the neighborhood. So I'm thinking about three elements that I can connect the two images together. So first thing would be the hues. I'm thinking about the colors the colors on both images that goes well with each other. I'm also thinking about another thing is the visual motif, the elements, like the metaphorical element and the very direct element. Let's say in this one, we can see the broken glasses from the car, and then the broken glasses from the bus stop. So that's the visual motif. And then we can see a very similar kind of like creamy metallic brown color on the car panel, but also kind of like very cooler tone white color on the bus stop. And then finally, I spent a great deal of the time just to play around the placement, to play around the scale, to play around, the layering, and then just to really find all the touching points. So in this work, we can see there are two main areas for the touching points. So one of them would be this frame, the line going from this frame and then keep continuing. And then this area where there's like a very subtle line from the bus stop that continue flow through the lines over here. So I really put an emphasis on that because I think about the photography is about the act of looking. It's all about looking. It's about how you see things, how you see things in the world, how you draw connections when things don't make sense together. And I want to make sense. I want to make sense out of nonsense. which has very similar practice with all the smaller collages. It is very obvious in this mixed media collages, but it is also presented in this work. And if you are familiar with my work, or if you have a chance to see all the collages, you might find them very humorous. You might find them very funny, and there's a very specific reason behind it. And that reason, I want to focus on the dark humor, and the dark humor, especially in the context of the Chinese culture. Since 2020, my country has become very, chaotic, lockdown, everything, and then, and it also kind of becomes in a way that it's becomes very worrisome for all the Chinese people, for all of my cohort, all my fellow Chinese people who are very progressive. It's very worrisome in a way that we have never been closer to those people in the propaganda poster than ever, in a way that I am finding so many parallels and so much relevancies in using through the propaganda posters, and in a way that it's so worrisome, but also in a way that we cannot say that. Otherwise, we will be put in the jail. So, so how do we do that? How do we express our stress? Then we just resort to humor, because when things have been taken away, maybe the only thing we have left is the ability to make fun of our life, make silly jokes, looking at the silly memes, and so it's really, I really want to. So this work really implements a lot of the layer of dark humor, and something that can be very. It might be distressing for some people, but then I think this is just what we're dealing with every day, and this is how we deflect, how we cope with it. We use dark humor, and how, like, one of the primary pusher of this dark humor is this very specific Chinese subculture. It's called, in Mandarin, it's called 桑文化, or Sang culture, or be a little literal, it would be funeral culture. It's not very accurate. I recently just realized actually called Sang culture is more accurate. So this kind of specific subculture, it's about the idea of being okay with incompetency, being okay with mediocrity, being okay with just I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to lay down because there's no point. Like, what's the point of keep fighting if there's no future? And this kind of mentality, it's really a main product, especially very popular among Chinese millennials. I'm pretty sure Chinese Gen Z is very popular among our generation, because it's really hard for us to see a future with everything that is happening around the world, and everything that is happening between the geopolitical superpowers, and and then we just resort to this kind of a very subculture to cope with that. And some of the things, visual element, arts, and TV, movie, and the medias, they also speak about the same thing, signals and idea, and these are some of the stuff for reference to help you understand what we are relating to in terms of the idea. And also using this kind of perpetuating this kind of sound culture also has this very significant societal reasons, because our society really emphasizes on positivity, I mean toxic positivity, in a way that you cannot be pessimistic. You should always work hard. If you work hard, you will get what you want. And if you cannot be sad. You cannot be complaining about your coworker. You cannot be complaining about your 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. work schedule, because that will create instability to the society. That's the general environment right now. And actually, so in the way that our society or the authority, they are really trying to suppressing this idea of being negative, this like suppressing this like negative energy by enforcing people to think positively all the time, 24/7, regardless of situation. So that's why implementing this kind of like sound culture is very important in my work, but also it's very important culturally and societally among Chinese millennials or anyone who feels who are concerned with the state of the world. I'm pretty sure like some of you probably also feel the same way. And then at the same time, it's a very silent disagreement with the mainstream value and the political value. And then I'm thinking of, all this work I created while I was getting my artist visa. So for the past 20 months, I tried really hard to make work in my studio. I tried really hard to apply to as many shows as possible, so I can prove to all the daddies and the mommies and the immigration office to prove that I am enough. I'm really trying. I'm trying really hard. Please see my efforts. So this exhibition really also encapsulates my journey of trying to be enough, trying to be enough with my 120% of my efforts, and then just to just so I can have a chance to build a life here. I mean, I don't even know if I can afford a house here, so there's that. I know that also speaks to, in the broader sense, speaks to all the people who are from, other countries who wanted to have life here, but then they have to, before they can do that, before they can have the chance, they have to go through a layers of bureaucratic process. They have to go through layers of documents and dealing with a great amount of anxiety, because they don't know if, today the letter from the USCIS, they don't know if that's going to be an approval or a rejection, and then they don't know if they will have enough time to pack everything to leave the country in 10 days if it was a rejection. So it was a really long 20 months for me, just living in this constant fear every day that I don't know if I will be here. I don't know if I can make this show happen the way I want it. I don't know, I don't know if I can still make it work. Can still make this work if I have to go back. So so all this kind of like frustration, anxiety, and uncertainty, all distilled into this wall specifically, with all the work here that talks about the kind of like directly using cultural references and start using the commercial, actually the commercial in the US, and they use that as an anchor point to create work, to speak to comment on this kind of bureaucracy, to comment on this kind of like the career as an artist, it's like, sometimes people will tell you if you work hard, you can be as famous as Jeff Koons. And I mean, in terms of how you can be there, how you can do that, they will tell you, just work hard, and you just got to figure yourself out. And also this wall also speaks to kind of like all the things that I feel about for the past couple months, all the things that gave me anxiety, gave me depression, gave me comfort, gave me something to look forward to. I watched WandaVision at least 4 times. I go through everything at least 4 times. That's my comfort show for the past year. It's a show about, in a sense, it's a show about this superhero character who's also trying to find her food in the U.S. while dealing with all the, kind of like difficulties while she is just trying to get a normal life. And in this sense, I am really relating to that. And then I want to give your attention to the work behind you. So this big installation is made with 20 pieces of screen prints, 3 pieces of trimmed archival prints from propaganda posters, including 1 button that I took from the screenshot, and 1 vinyl print in the background. So this work is kind of like an experimental piece. Just one day, we were chatting with C, and C told me about something like, why don't you try something new? Why don't you try make it into installation? I was like, sure, I want to try that. I want to push myself. I mean, that's the point of being an artist. You always want to push yourself. And so, yeah, sure, I want to do it. And oh boy, it was a lot. I totally underestimated how complex and how much work it took. But I'm glad I did it with all of the help from friends. You will recognize yourself. And this work really speaks about the idea of this. Another idea of the work of the show is that the subversion and the identity, especially this queer identity, and also the experience of of living in the U.S. So this work is really talking about reimagine this scenario where a group of cohort go to New York, go to MoMA, checking out Andy Warhol's Campbell soup piece. But in my reality, everything's different. Instead of my cohort is the people that are cut off from propaganda posters. It's instead of a Campbell soup, it is actually prints of Lady Gaga Oreos, and instead of being in an interior space, it is actually outside somewhere in the Death Valley in Nevada. So this work is really pushing the limits of my collage making, but also connecting these 2 very different modes of making into this one piece. That's all I have to say for my work. And one more thing, I know so many people during the interview and when people came out to my show, they had asked, are those real? Are those Lady Gaga Oreos real? I'm hearing a rumor, so it's real. I got this in last year. I don't know if it's expired. This is real. I made that work literally from this Lady Gaga Oreos. I never opened it, so I don't think I will open it. Well, thank you so much for listening to my artist talk. And now I will open in the question section to the floor. Yeah, just ask away. Any question? Yes, please.
Well, I don't know if this is a question so much, but have you thought about the fact that with COVID over the last several years, it's been a somewhat parallel situation to being diasporic. Everybody has been separated from their people and off on their own without that community support. And I don't know, I'm just curious if you thought of that in terms of the multiple layers of meaning in the work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely, so there's a definitely, definitely there's a connotation about connecting in a way that I am literally connecting, several very different unrelated, imageries from different era, from different medium, from literally different space, some literally connecting them together. Excuse me, and in a way that's kind of speaks to the idea of the connection. And also when I first started this series in the 2020, a lot of the work, some of the work I made was about the idea of a pandemic and the idea of how to be more kind of like how can they use propaganda? How can they use Chinese propaganda to subvert idea, to recontextualize them, to recontextualize this historical medium into something that can be beneficial, can be positive to the community. So yeah, I definitely have thought about that. And then some of the work, they're not on this show. They dealt with that topic. Yeah. Excuse me, I drink my water. That's the thing. This is what will happen once you move to the Pacific Northwest. You just start carrying water bottles. It will probably prevent you from getting gout. So. Stay hydrated. Yes.
So the United States government and the Chinese government are obviously very similar, very dissimilar in other ways. But I wonder, in your time in the United States, your experience with the millennial generation specifically, if you have noticed, or in what ways you have noticed, and also in what ways it is represented in this work, whether or not the youth of the United States is participating in a similar type of culture that has influenced you so much in China.
Let me rephrase that question. So you asked about how the elements of the millennial is present in the work. Is that am I catching that correctly?
The aspects of I think it was pronounced, is it song culture?
Song culture, yes.
And how that is practiced by the United States, and what ways you've noticed that, and how it's exhibited in your work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a really good question. I think there's definitely a parallels between this kind of like the emotional mentality across not only China but the U.S. Just like thinking about this idea of working so hard just so hard in the work just so you can make a minimum wage. It's like it really creates a lot of frustration and anxiety to younger people, and also in conjunction with the general political environment, the geopolitical environment, and the societal issue that is happening across the country here and across China and everywhere else in the world. So there's definitely a huge presence here in terms of American version of some culture, in a way that if you are on TikTok or some of the very kind of meme accounts on Instagram, you will definitely catch that essence through those memes. Yeah. Yes.
I'm interested in hearing more about the connection of the images of the cars or the automobile form in these larger pieces, and how that might connect to the larger context of your work.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think about the cars as a personal starting point, because I love cars so much, but I think we should definitely focus more on public transportation. So that's very but to me, I think about cars as something I will always spend a lot of time on, and that's like just one very natural subject that I always take photos of. And then on the other hand, I'm also thinking about this kind of like a connection, and in a way that cars are used to as a tool to bring us to places, to bring us to people, to bring us to the next destination. I'm thinking about the cars as a way to implement the idea of connections. And then also thirdly, I'm also thinking about in this body of work, I'm also thinking about the scale, the color, and specifically what this large scale work brings to the audience. They're large scale. They're quieter compared to all the smaller collages. So it's really kind of like subverting the idea of cars. They're not loud anymore. You cannot register like just the image, the elements on the image as a car, as a whole object, and it also just bring everything to the stop because there's no movement. It's so big. It's so still. And in a way that when you stand in front of all this larger work, you kind of just it becomes a little bit meditative. So that's my thinking behind implementing cars in this body of work. And yes.
So since your show is opened and sharing all this with everybody, has it healed any of the pain and confusion that comes with living in the diaspora?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the question. So, yeah, I think definitely, in a sense, I don't think it will completely heal me because in 2 years, I'm going to go through the same process again. So, but in a way that by making this body of work, and by sharing all this work through social media, through my friends, I was able to hear a lot of feedback that shares the same, that resonates, that in a way that a lot of people, they came to my show, they told me this work resonated with them, and then in a way that the fact that even though the work is very personal, it's very specific to this very specific group of people, the fact that I can still find the resonation among audience, among the community, that is a great deal of validation, and also that is a tremendous amount of healing for me. But the healing process will continue. So yes, that's a great question. Yes.
So memes, both memes and propaganda are prevalent in your work. And looking at your series, I started to think of memes almost as the antidote to propaganda. What do you think is the relationship between those two things, and what do you think is the importance of memes within the fine art context?
Yes. To answer the question, I think about the purpose of a propaganda. In this sense, I want to broaden the propaganda into all the propaganda in the world, like the propaganda in the general sense. The propaganda is usually used by the authority to persuade people, or like tricking people to buy into a certain doctrine, into certain belief, and this is very much in your face. It's the voice is very strong, and in a way that it's kind of very suppressing. It's very suppressing. And then the purpose of memes, although they're mostly very funny, but they're actually talking about some really serious stuff. It's like a meme is one of the contemporary, or like a medium for us to very subtly, very evasively to poke around serious social issues. And by combining them together, the memes kind of just becomes the idea of memes, or the using this inspiration from the memes kind of becomes a great weapons are like great tools for social or political commentaries and react to the propaganda. Yes.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on your work if it were to be exhibited in China?
It's not gonna happen. That's a good question. So it's because of the nature of me as an artist and the nature of the work. When I got really deep into this work, I have totally discarded the Chinese art market. Like I cannot, this work cannot and will not exist in China. There's no way it will exist in China. So yeah, so kind of in a way that this work, I'm creating them specific to, the diaspora, the Chinese diaspora, who are dislocated from their home country, who can understand, in this case, the Chinese people who came here, who are trying to find their life, they can understand all the, US pop culture element. They can also understand the historic Chinese propaganda elements. So in this sense, I'm really creating the work for the audience that is outside of China. Yes?
So, I know that this specifically focuses on Chinese propaganda, but like, have you dissected and analyzed and dived into or dove into American propaganda of China? And also, if so, like, where did that lead you? What like emotions did that bring up? Yeah, I guess just like how did those like mix into this, or like how did those cross over? And like where did it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I definitely have been thinking about where I want to go for the next step, because I've been making this body of work for 2 years. I would say I have a fairly complete body of work. So now I'm also thinking about, because I've been here for so long, and I want to tap into the idea of American propaganda. And then I think about, isn't American propaganda just like ads?
Yeah.
Isn't that just like, TV shows? Isn't that, the product? It's like the idea of consumerism, the idea of capitalism. It's the kind of propaganda through the implementing TV show, WandaVision, isn't that kind of a propaganda? And even think about all the shows that I grew up watching. Watching the OC when I grew up, and that's one of the things. The people live in the Orange County, they drive a BMW 7 Series, the Land Rover, and they do all the drama. That's probably the American life I wanna go for. And then really and then you realize, well, after you're here, it's just really not the case. You're every day you're thinking about it's not a BMW, it's about how can you pay the rents. Yeah, so really think about, the idea of American propaganda is really kind of, subtly, it's everywhere. It's everywhere in our daily life. And then also in a way that the idea that a lot of people want to be here, they want to have a life here, they want to immigrate here, they want to deal with all the great amount of documentation bureaucracy, they still want to have a life here, really speaks to how strong the influence this American culture of the United States have on all the other countries. So that's, so to your questions, when I think about the propaganda, American propaganda, I really want to approach in a way that is more in tune to pop culture, because it's something like I am so invested into this American pop culture in a way that I am also a consumer literally a consumer of American propaganda right now. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I know that you use individual images and you put together your work made out of different images. But I wonder if doing that, if you also have sort of a distrust of a single image to make a point. It seems as if you use a lot of single images to make your point, and that you, well, I'm just asking, is there sort of a sense of maybe it's incomplete, or you don't trust an image in a way that maybe prior generations trusted an image in a different kind of way?
Yeah, so I'm not distrusting, I am trusting I'm trusting that I can use this single image and manipulate them in a way that they can become a component into something bigger, something very different. So the way I approach a single image or like a photography, I use this analogy. It's kind of like cooking. Each single image, each found image, photos, picture, they're just one ingredient. They're like just one giant piece of pork belly. It's good on its own, but in terms of like how can you make them into something even more amazing, it's really about how you cook them, what kind of other ingredient you add to it, how do you cut them, how do you make syrup, what kind of dressing you want to use that, and you use that energy, and that's kind of like how I approach to my art making, especially the way I use the image, in a way that the image, they are pretty on their own, but they also have so much potentials to become a part of something even greater, and to be image for me, they're fluid. They're a tool for me to create something else. Thank you. Oh, yes, Renee.
Okay, speaking of pork belly.
I'll make one.
No, what really got me is that like so often in like formal photography education, you are using what so many, even like as a teacher, like we would consider being like, oh no, like we can't ask our students to use screenshots or geotags, or that kind of formalism that surrounds like photography with a capital P. What set you up to be someone who looks at everything like material? Like where does that come from?
Yes. Okay. So that's a really good question. That's like something I forgot to mention in my talk. That's when you have so many layers, in your work, you really forgot. Okay, I need to talk about that. So I want to talk about the idea of using screenshots. So I've been having this thought for a very long time. I've been thinking about screenshotting, the idea of screen grabbing. It's kind of like a documentary photography in the digital realm, in our digital screen. So think about documentary photography. What do they do? Supposedly, they're supposed to capture a moment in real life by pressing the button on your camera. And then what does screenshot do? It also captures the moment. It also tries to preserve the moment. And by doing that, you press the screenshot button on your phone. And then you screenshot that moment before it might goes away. In the reality, you want to take that documentary photo because that's a one decisive moment. If you don't catch that, it will just goes away. And in the digital realm, if you don't take a screenshot of these tweets, or if you don't take a screenshot of these articles, it might be taken down by the authority next day. So it's really about the action of preserving evidence. And that's how I see the screenshot as a very contemporary approach to documentary photography, because so much of our life is intertwined with digital landscape, so much intertwined with social media. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for attending this talk.